There's a thought I keep coming back to. At some point, I'm not sure exactly when, I noticed that most of my plans had a particular shape to them. They all pointed forward. Finish this, then rest. Get through this stage, then begin. Earn this, build this, fix this, then the real thing begins. And I started wondering, when exactly does the living part begin? Because I'd been waiting for it for a while, and the more I looked, the more I saw the same pattern everywhere. In my own habits, in the way people talk about their weeks, their years, their lives, always oriented towards a point just ahead, always in the anteroom of something. So that's what this video is about. Not productivity, not hustle culture, something quieter than that. And I think more worth examining. I want to give this pattern a name because I think naming things is the first step to seeing them clearly. Let's call it when, then thinking. When I finish this project, then I'll take a break. When I get to a better place financially, then I'll start enjoying things. When I lose this weight, when I move to the new place, when things settle down, then I'll begin. It sounds reasonable. It often is reasonable. Planning ahead, delaying gratification, working towards something. These are genuinely good things. I'm not here to argue against them. But there's a version of this that goes further than strategy. A version where the present is never quite real. Where today is always just the scaffolding for tomorrow. Where you are, in a subtle but persistent way, absent from your own life. And the strange thing about this pattern is how invisible it is. While you are in it, it doesn't feel like avoidance. It feels like responsibility. Seneca wrote about this almost 2,000 years ago, which tells you something about how long humans have been doing it. In his letters, he keeps returning to the same concern. Not that life is short, but that we are wasting it. That we are profligate with our time in a way we'd never be with money. We guard our possessions carefully, he says, but let our hours slip through without a second thought. He writes about people who have always been about to begin living, who are planning, preparing, accumulating, deferring the actual existence of being alive to some future point that never quite arrives. He found this, more than anything else, the great tragedy of human existence. Not death, postponement. Kierkegaard, writing in the 19th century, described something adjacent to this in his account of what he called the aesthetic mode of existence. The person living aesthetically is always skimming the surface, seeking the next experience, the next pleasure, the next achievement, but never quite landing. Never fully committing to the weight of real life. Always, in some sense, in the wings of their own story. And then there's Irvin Yalom, a contemporary existential therapist, who describes deferred living as something close to a defense mechanism. If you keep the real life at arm's length, always just around the corner, you also keep at arm's length the fact that it's finite. To live fully is to accept that living will also end. And that's a confronting thing to accept. So this isn't a new idea, but I think it deserves revisiting, because the conditions for it have never been more intense. We live inside systems, professional, social, digital, that reward constant forward orientation, that make preparation feel like virtue and presence feel almost indulgent. I want to tell you about a specific period in my own life, because I think the abstract only takes you so far. A few years ago, I was working towards something I'd wanted for a long time. I won't be too specific. It doesn't really matter what it was. What matters is the shape of the experience. I was genuinely committed, genuinely working hard, and I told myself, with complete sincerity, that this was a temporary mode, a season of intensity, after which I'd return to something more balanced, more present, more fully inhabited. That story made sense to me. It felt mature, responsible. But the season kept extending. Not because I failed. Actually, things were going reasonably well. The goalposts kept moving, though. Once I'd reached one threshold, there was another one ahead that seemed even more meaningful, more worth waiting for. The temporary mode started to feel like the permanent one. And then, one afternoon, I remember this clearly, I was sitting outside somewhere ordinary, a bench. It was in the autumn. Nothing significant happening, and for a few minutes, I wasn't thinking about what came next. I was just there. In the unremarkable fact of being alive on a particular afternoon, the sun on my face, hearing the wind. And it felt, in a way I found hard to explain, like something I'd been away from for a long time. That's the thing about this pattern. You don't notice you're in it until you accidentally step outside it. And when you do, there's a mixture of relief and something that might be grief for the ordinary moments you let pass by without inhabiting them. I want to be careful here, because I think this idea can be misused. The easy version of this argument goes, right, stop planning, stop striving, be present, live now. And while there's something of truth in that, it's incomplete in the way that matters. Some things really do require sacrifice in the present for meaning later. Raising children, learning a craft, building something that lasts. These are not delusions. These are among the most genuinely alive things a person can do. And they involve long stretches of difficulty, patience, and deferred reward. So the question isn't really, are you preparing or living, as if those were opposites. The question is more like, are you present inside your preparing? Because there's a version of working towards something where you are genuinely in it, engaged, curious, even suffering meaningfully. And there's a version where you're vacated the premises, where the work is happening, technically, but you've withdrawn into a waiting room in your own mind, marking time until the real thing starts. The difference isn't visible from the outside. It might not even be visible from the inside at first. But I think you can learn to feel it. There's a quality of engagement, a kind of contact with what you're actually doing that tells you whether you're present or absent. And I think that quality is what we're really talking about when we talk about living. I don't want to end this with a framework or a list of habits. That will be the wrong register for what I'm trying to say. Because I don't think this is a problem you solve once and move on from. I think it's something you keep noticing, keep catching yourself inside, and keep gently correcting. It's less a conclusion than an ongoing question. The question being something like, where am I right now in relation to my own life? Am I here, actually here, in contact with this moment, this work, this person, this ordinary afternoon? Or have I slipped into the anteroom again, waiting for the version of things that will finally feel real? I find that question more useful than any answer, because the answer changes, and the asking keeps you honest. Seneca, in one of his letters, says simply, Dum differtur vita transcurrit. While we delay, life passes. It's blunt, maybe even a little harsh, but I found it useful to keep somewhere close, not as a source of anxiety, not as another thing to optimize around, but as a quiet reminder. The life you're preparing for, you're already in it. That's either a frightening thought or a freeing one. Maybe it's both. I'll leave that with you. If this is the kind of thinking you want more of, there's more here. Take your time with it.